Boy, did you hear that overwhelming applause? Man, that was awesome. Oh, look at there, yeah. Oh, now they feel guilty now. Hey, how's everybody doing? Good. Hey, how many of you are here for the first time? Okay, I've done 3 weeks. All right, so first time. How many of you been all three? Oh, look at you, look at you. 2, everybody likes to vote. How many, this is your second one? All right, so we got everybody in. Some of you still not sure if you're here or not. You know, the first week I dealt with Ephesians, and I'll reference that verse tonight. Ephesians 4, where we're to equip the saints to do the work of the ministry. And, you know, basically a pastor leads a congregation, and as he leads them to join him in the vision God has placed in his heart in order to see the vision, what could be for the church to become a reality. And there's so much to do. I've pastored a church that grew rather large, but it just depends on which way you look at it. It could be large by the number attended, but if you measured against the people that need to be reached, we had a long ways to go. So it just depends on how you look at it. And then last week we came back and dealt with the day Moses became a leader, and we looked at Exodus chapter 18, and really where if other people don't help to carry the weight, you lose a lot of good people. But tonight is probably the most technical. So, you know, you've hung in there with me in the sense that it's really the nuts and bolts of what it looks like to get people to come and to serve. So we're going to look at the 3 words. I keep mentioning them, but I've actually not explained them like I will tonight. And that is, you're trying to discover new people to serve. So if I were here and I was over connections, if it was my duty to involve other people in ministry, what I'm going to teach tonight, I wouldn't be able to do it without knowing something about how do you discover other leaders, and then how do you develop them, and how do you deploy them into work. And so it's happened in our own life. We can take it if you're serving somewhere and understand this. So we've entitled it Digging for Gold. And I wrote my first leadership book. Oh my gosh, I must have written 20 years ago. But it was building a leadership resume. And in that book, one of my chapters was digging for gold. And I used to say it at Woodstock all the time, there's gold in them there pews. But you got to dig for it. They're there. And then you discover who they are, you develop them, and you deploy them. So let's dive in, because it's going to take our time to go through. And you encouraged me by being here. And so, Lord willing, next Wednesday night, I'm going to deal with this subject. I wrote it, and we put it in national training. And the first part that I'm going to do is called The Leader I Want to Be. And then I'm going to talk about how to be a leader that listens. Now, my wife gets a kick out of the fact that I consult with churches in 4 states. And she says, what's the biggest part? I said, well, I don't really tell those pastors what they need to do. Honey, if you'll listen to them, they know what to do. You need to hear what they're saying. And then you say, here's what you're saying. And then you show them how to embrace that for themselves. She said, hold on, time out. You listen? And I said, yeah. I mean, any of you men, your wife ever said that to you, that you don't listen? Good, let me see your hand. And the rest of you are to get in the altar. All right. All right. So anyway, she said, this is a shocker. You listen. How do you listen? I said, they pay me to listen. And she's not offered to pay, so we're going to just truck on. You know what I mean? But that's where it is. So I'm not paying you either, but I need you to listen. And I'll try to help you. I'm going to tell you what, I'm glad they printed the notes out. If you do any type service, honestly, these ought to be part in your file. You ought to be able to say, I mean, you can pick it up and teach it. They're elementary. That's why I wrote so much when I was preaching for a while as an adjunct professor in our seminaries. I did what's called an exhaustive outline. When you're younger, you make a few notes and then you memorize everything. You go back and pick it up 10 years from now and you think, what is this? I mean, it doesn't resemble. So I write now in a way where I could actually put it in a book. And that's how I did so many books over the years. All right, so here it is. The Pony Express originated in 1860. They promised mail delivery between St. Louis, Missouri, and Sacramento, California in 10 days or less. When recruiting riders, it is said that their advertisement read, "Wanted, young, skinny, wiry fellows not over 18. Must be expert riders willing to risk death daily, orphans preferred." Man, the Marines recruit with the advertisements. Till this day, wanted a few good men. And you know, it's men or women now. So what's the job that never ends in the church? What's the one thing you never have enough of? What's the thing that you go to bed with, dream of, and wake up with every morning? It's the need for more leaders. We never had, seemingly, enough nursery workers. In our best days at Woodstock, we had 1,800, now hear this, children, not preschoolers, not teenagers, children, 1,800 on campus every Sunday morning that were attending small groups. It was remarkable the number we needed, and we wanted 3 or 4 people to help every teacher. And so we were always looking. So churches, as a rule, never have enough leaders. So as pastors, we're looking for more. The truth is, listen to this statement. God has everyone at your church today He needs for your church to accomplish what He's called this congregation to do. But not all are in service. There truly is gold sitting in our pews. So how do we mine for gold? I wrote Pastors are Gold Diggers. Now some would say that's always trying to get what. I used to be offended. Somebody talked about me trying to get what they had because I was a giver, not a taker. So Ephesians 4 is what I did the first lesson on. He gave some pastors and teachers for the equipping. I'm supposed to be equipping the saints for the work of the ministry. And what happens when that does? It edifies the body of Christ. So really, the building up of the church is my duty in equipping you to be a part of that. So a lot of times, if you don't like the way the church is going, look in the mirror and you'll see the problem. That went over real big. Okay. Now, I meant that for encouragement, all right? So there really is gold in our churches, and the gold is our people. The greatest resource is not what our people have. Our greatest resource is the people. And so, like gold, they're great value, and they bring great value. So if our churches are to be all they can be, then our people must be all they can be, for they are the church. Sometimes people say, I just don't like the way things are going at our church. Excuse me, you are the church. So it's like saying, I don't like me. I want to be one that doesn't just note what needs to be done. I want to be one that acts to help meet the need for what needs to be done. So some of your gold is yet to be mined, and some of it's yet to be purified. In other words, it needs to be purified, and normally when you turn the heat up, and that's what happens when you jump in, and some of it has yet to be leveraged. So if I was thinking about the fact that there's discovery, you've got to mine for it. And then if you want to develop them, it's got to be purified. And then if you want them to deploy and get in ministry, that's where you're leveraging your people for the needs that you have. So I'm going to look at 3 important aspects: discovering, developing, and deploying gold. So now here's what I have to do tonight. I realize that you've got some in here that it's their duty. That's what they've got to do. They're out looking for you. They're mining for gold. But I'd like also to say to those of you that are valuable and can add value when you're leveraged for God's kingdom, that you ought to make yourself available and say, hey, I don't know what God's going to do with me, but I put my yes on the table, and I want the Lord to use me. I was a new student at Gardner Webb College. I was a high school dropout. I've told you, finished on a GED. And so I was able to get into a Christian university. And it was a big deal because I didn't really have money. I'd not seen my dad in over probably a dozen years at that time. And my mom was in failing health and was on welfare. She wasn't able to help any. And so I had been married a few years, and yet I sensed God wanted to do something in my life. And so I went off and went into school. And I'll never forget, I had a missions professor that I took a real liking to. He became one of my favorite. And he did a lot to personally invest in me. But I'll never forget it. You've seen it, but I saw it for the first time. Behind his desk, when I'm standing at his desk, and I'm talking to him, but it captures my attention, and I find myself reading it. Only one life, and it will soon pass. Only what's done for Christ will last. And it was whatever I'm going to do for him, I've got to do now, really. And I'm not promised tomorrow. And my life is like vapor. If you were here Sunday, you heard some of that. So I really do. I want to make a difference now. I'm at an age that I could retire. Here's another thing. I could afford to retire. I prepared for this day in my life. But retirement is not in my heart. And by the way, this is interesting. It's not in the Bible. So you may step away from something that you were doing, but I want to serve the Lord as long as I'm physically able. I really do. I'm going to preach as long as I can. I'm going to help pastors and their staff as long as I possibly can. So with that in mind, so we're going to discover mind for it. So number one, where do you find leaders? And this isn't speculation, by the way. This is how we built First Baptist Woodstock. In adult small group Bible study classes. Talking to Jeremy a moment ago, and I just made a statement as observation. This church, and I know it's a space issue but it's where you get creative. You know, listen to this statement. If you want to do something bad enough, you'll find a way. If you don't, you find an excuse. And so we're good at that. I can't. No, I can. I can do all things. So I just have to start getting creative. Where can I have a small group? So in small group Bible study classes, you don't get leaders from preschool. You don't get them from children. And 99% of the time, you don't get them from youth department. Leaders are adults. Therefore, you have to tap into your adult classes and find and get new leaders. So wherever there's a gathering of people. Now that we've established where we find new leaders, let's ask the next most important question. Who should be involved with you in the recruiting process? And by the way, I'm going to talk about two different things, and I'll tell you as I start transitioning with it, I'm going to talk to you about the difference in recruiting and enlisting, because there is a significant difference. So who should be involved? Adult teachers. Here's a statement. It's a matter of fact. Leaders know leaders. Let me visit with people, and I can make somewhat of an assessment of where they are in their leadership. So it only stands to reasons. If leaders are adults, then your adult teachers must partner with you in this critical endeavor. All right, I don't know if there's anyone in here that teaches adults. And the question is, are there times that you're not here that you have to get someone to substitute for you? Well, what you would do is say, yeah, I've got a substitute teacher. We never called them. We didn't have substitute teachers. We had teachers in training. If somebody filled in for you as an adult leader, I knew another adult leader. Let me tell you what I would hear. Hey, so-and-so is filled in probably 5 times in the last 6 months because our teachers had to be gone. What a tremendous teacher. Exactly. How do you know that? Did you not hear what I said a moment ago? Leaders know leaders. And you know. So these are the perfect people to find. And I'm going to tell you how we dealt with that. So if it stands to reason, adult teachers got to partner with you in this critical endeavor. So I would meet with adult teachers and get to know them and build relationships with them. I would go We did once a month, we would actually have a small group night on a Sunday evening before church, or when we did away with Sunday night church, we would do it during that particular time. So number 3, adult teachers are the heart of the church that continually pumps leadership blood through the veins of the body. Now, if you don't have many adult gatherings, you really have lost the major area that you ought to be mining. And it just stands to reason you ought to have them. Dietrich Bonhoeffer in 1930 wrote a book entitled Life Groups. 1930. You know, sometimes we say, oh, we don't call our Sunday school. We call it Life Group. Like we got something new. How many of you know there's nothing new under the sun? And so basically it's been around. So your adult teachers know the potential leaders of your church better than anyone. So they meet with them every week. They study the scriptures with them every week. They do ministry with them. They pray with them. They know them. Therefore, you're unwise not to team up with them and make them your partners in finding and developing new leaders. If I were the pastor of this church, I don't plan to, or if I were the pastor and I came in and took it right here where it is, I'm just telling you, somewhere or another, in homes or whatever, we would build small groups. I know Steve appreciates me talking about what I would do. All right, but anyway, I would do that, and I would be going to any of you adults that are connected with people, and I would anticipate that you could tell me who other leaders are. Let me tell you what I dealt with. My student pastor came to me one time, and he said, Pastor Johnny, we need some teachers, but we can't find anybody to serve. Now, I want you to listen to it. So instead of an answer, I needed to ask a question. The question is, can he not find anybody, or has he not made it his business to know a lot of people? Did that tell me more about his need, or did it tell me more about his deficit? Now, I'm serious. So I get to know people and to meet people. When somebody visits this church, you ought to have some questions for them. Somebody should. So questions like this: where are you coming to us from? What did you do there? You may find out they've moved to your community, but they've been a leading teacher, a great musician somewhere. And so if you'll listen, let me tell you what you're looking for: affinity group. Who is it they identify with? And that's how they're going to connect. A mom and dad wants to visit New Season, okay? They've got 3 teenagers, and the teenagers are connected at their church. They do not want to come. They come here kicking and screaming until they sit down and they look around. And you know what they're looking for? Listen carefully. They're looking for their affinity group. And they look and they say, oh my God, look, there's Sissy. I didn't know Sissy went to this church. Now there's some connectivity. Now, all of a sudden, they are so glad. I mean, they've had revival, in coming. And that has to happen in a church. We used to have people just come and visit our office on Monday, and they'd say, my mother, I'm here from Michigan. I've moved my mother here. She wants to live here in this area outside of Atlanta. What do y'all have for senior adults? Wait a minute. What is she asking? That's her affinity group. Are there any seniors here? Matter of fact, let me tell you what kind of people a church reaches, the kind of people it has. So if you don't like the people that are joining, they're just like you. I just thought you were. But no, you really do. A professional visits a church, and he just says, they don't really have many professionals there. Common man, it doesn't matter. We're not putting on different bases. It's affinity groups. It's where do you connect? I have a friend with me that's a businessman that rode over with me tonight from Woodstock, and he's been here every week, but we were able to ride together tonight. And basically he's just telling me, he said, I'm in a Sunday school class, but I'm visiting around. I said, I was interested. I said, well, tell me why. He said, the people that are in that class, we have nothing in common with them. Their kids are all out of school, and ours are just graduating, and there's just no common bond there. The affinity just doesn't fit, and they look for that in there. So you meet with them every week, you know them. You're able to recommend some of these people that this person has taught, will taught, is willing to learn to teach. Number 4, adult teachers will either grow your church by raising up new leaders. Hold on now, listen to this negative statement. They'll kill your church by keeping everyone in their class. We never talked about splitting a class. We divided and multiplied classes. It's just the way you look at it. So if it's a small group and people like that, they get to know each other. If it gets as big as like an auditorium class, it just doesn't have the potential to just blend like you wish they could. So the way you develop and deploy your adult teachers are the key to an ever perpetuating ministry. So you're constantly doing it. Some of you are new tonight, and I told you this, and it really is something. When I left Woodstock on Sunday morning, 352 classes on Sunday morning. Do the math. 352 teachers. Do the math. 352 outreach leaders. Do the math. 352 that handled evangelism. 352 that were over activities. I mean, so we involved other people, and we were constantly creating a pool of new leaders. Number 5, the adult division of your Sunday school is the most strategic area of ministry in your whole church. Notice I said it's the most strategic area. I did not say the most important, because all of them are important. But sometimes there's some that are more strategic. So the adult division is the most strategic because they grow and help develop more future leaders than anyone else in the church. So you'd be wise to know this and then act accordingly. I want to have some adult classes. So if someone in our church, and if I was over that church, I would want to meet with them and say, tell me about who you're teaching. And then I'd say this, tell me how you're developing new leaders. How many people have you put in service? A book came out years ago. One was called Good to Great, and it just became well known in the church and in the secular world. It was a non-Christian wrote it, but truth is truth regardless of where it's found. And then another book came out called Simple Church. And here's what you had to ask. If I'm a Sunday school teacher, is my class making disciples? I mean, I've been mandated that the church is to make disciples. So am I growing disciples? Are people coming to Christ? Did you know there was a time that 1 out of every 4 people converted in our church was converted in a small group? They were actually saved in the small group and then made their profession of faith public through baptism in the church service. But the Sunday school was the outreach arm of the church. So once a year, we ask our adult teachers to submit names of people in their class with whom we could follow up with. Then what I would do is send out a letter asking them and their spouses or special friends to attend a dinner that I would host for them. And in the letter, I'd let them know that they could come with no strings attached. There was no obligation on their part or ours. But at the dinner, I'd take a few minutes to cast a personal vision for what their life could look like in service. And I tried to help them see God's plan for them that will engage their God-given spiritual gift to be a spiritual help to others, to bear spiritual fruit, and ultimately to bring glory to God. So they're beginning to think, wait a minute, Johnny sees my life as valuable, and he wants me to make it valuable in the life of other people. And then our minister of education would take a few minutes and cast really what I'd call an organizational vision of how our Sunday school is the way we fulfill the Great Commission. We literally cared for our church through Sunday school. We didn't do it through a deacon ministry. I wrote the national material for the last 15 years for deacons in the SBC and in independent churches. 14,000 churches are training with our deacon material. But I don't believe that the deacons are the one to care for the church. I believe that that's where the small group comes in. because the people are in their classes, and anybody that's not in their class is a candidate for their class, and they're on their radar to try to be getting them in. Like, say, for instance, if I didn't have small groups, what is the means of even trying to engage the congregation to own the ministry? A fellow came to see me the other day. Here's what he said. He's a pastor. He called me and said, hey, can I take you and your wife, Miss Janet, to dinner? And I said, yeah, great. He said, are y'all doing anything on Monday night? And I said, no, not really. He said, can I spend the night with y'all? He lived about an hour and 15 minutes. I said, sure. So I knew he was up to something. And so he said, you think tomorrow morning you're an early riser when you up drink coffee? Could maybe you and I have 2 or 3 hours together and you help me with some things? And I said, sure. So I want you to listen to this, because this is what happens in small groups or in a church, which his was a new church, so a small group. He said, our church is running 300. I really would like to see us next year run 400. Nothing wrong with that. Now, somebody that's more spiritual than me, they say all they're interested in is numbers. No, you're interested in reaching people. You haven't heard it tonight. People are going to hell without Jesus. Some of them are your family, some of them are your neighbors, some of your work associates. And so we ought to be involved in getting the gospel to them. And if God's placed them next door to you, who better than you? I mean, my wife and I, we finally moved out. We feel like we're in the country. I'm still in Woodstock, but I'm almost in Milton. I'm almost in Fulton County. So I lived in a place called Town Lake with tens of thousands of homes. But so we moved out of there, and now I'm out on a little place called Ernie Road. There's 5 houses on a few acres of land. And I just made it my business. I mean, God's put me here. And you could sit there and say, I don't even know my neighbors. Well, if you'd go over there, and people don't do that a lot anymore. So I just got to tell you this true story. You get a kick out of it. So it was a little bit near the time of COVID. And so there was at our church, somebody was cooking Boston butts, pork, big pork deal. And so I thought, I'm going to buy every one of them one and take that over, and I'm going to take my book from the pool room to the pulpit, and I'm doing devotional books every year, so I'm going to go give them a nice leather bound, and I'm going to introduce myself and let them know we're over here and if we can do anything to help them. Well, the first family let me know real quick they were Jewish, and I thought, here I am taking this juice and pork. Yeah, you with me, aren't you? That's like, bringing a piano to a Church of Christ. But anyway, but they were kind. They accepted everything. They weren't Orthodox, you know what I mean? The Orthodox won't eat pork, and the non-Orthodox aren't supposed to, but they do. But anyway, but we introduced ourselves, and then I said, hey, we're neighbors, and you probably heard, I think people here, I said, I'm pastor at First Woodstock, and I'm a Christian. Anything I can ever do to serve you, any prayer request, I'd like to leave my number. You can tell me. And then when we were doing broadcasts in empty rooms for so long, I would send them links to every sermon. I have no idea if they ever listened to any, but there were 5 neighbors, and Jan and I got to know every one of them right now. I can tell you that Mark just went through cancer. I was writing him regularly, sending him verses of hope and encouragement. He got good news, and we've celebrated with him. I can tell you that Jack and Dawn, I've got a neighbor that's on the phone at his pool 3 acres away from me, and he don't need a phone. They could hear him in Indiana. I mean, he is so stinking loud. I mean, so I really know something about him. One of my neighbors was a pilot with Delta. For 25 years, he flew twice a week only to Argentina. I've never met him, but I've been to Argentina a couple of times a year for 25 years in a row. I'll guarantee I've flown with him. Now he's my neighbor. So we didn't know each other, but we had something in common, and we've served each other together. Have you won any of them yet? One or a couple know Jesus and really live for him. Others know, but we have attempted to, and we have made the gospel known to them. We've loved them where they are, and I know they're convinced that we care. Okay, so I want to talk with you about recruiting. And first of all, I want you to understand, and I made it, I'm going to say it in my notes, that there is a difference between recruiting and enlisting. And I'm going to cover enlisting later, but I'm going to start with recruiting. Now, recruiting is drawing people to the ministry, getting them to think, contemplate, and explore, and pray about the possibility of ministry. And I'm going to tell you how to do that. I mean, it's real technical, but I'm just going to tell you there's a way to do something to show importance in what you're doing. So recruiting people is just getting them to explore. Enlisting is exposing them to the expectations of the ministry. So you're not going to do that when you're just trying to recruit. I'm not going to tell them what it requires. You haven't even got any type of commitment out of them. And the standard to be a leader, to be a teacher at Woodstock, you sign a contract. Why? Because we value the people they're taking care of. Listen to this. We give clear expectations. Hey, we really want you to do this, but we need you to know that we need you here 30 minutes early. No parent needs to show up with a kid with no teacher in the room. So clear expectations. And by the way, if it's for the King of Kings, so y'all listening, if it's for him, it ought to be our best, all right? It ought to not be. Somebody says, you make it sound like it's a company. No, or you sound like it's a business. It is. It's the greatest business in town, okay, of making Jesus Christ known. So let me give you 4 recruiting methods to avoid. Number 1, recruiting out of duty only. This is something you're supposed to do. No, I'm going to lay it out before you, but I'm going to give you that opportunity. Did you notice every week when we preach the gospel, whether Steve's preaching or whoever's filling in, when you present the gospel, you invite people to come, but you can't make anybody come. You just can't. If you can talk them into it, somebody else can talk them out of it. Okay, so this is a very common way to recruit, and it works infrequently. And this is often a short-lived tenure because eventually the workers serve kind of what we call a tour of duty and then departs. And so we want somebody that really feels called. After they've looked at it, they've prayed through it, and we're going to show you those components that then they buy in. And so this tactic has little staying power if you're just convincing them they need to do it. So what the recruit hears is, we're in charge and we demand your service. I mean, we're just making it so uncomfortable. You're going to serve or probably not stay here. And that's the wrong way. All right, here's the other, recruiting just to fill positions. I'm working on staff. I've got a pastor above me that's expecting me to perform. So we don't have enough workers to meet all the needs of this ministry. And so we need people like you to fill those positions. Wrong way. This may be the common way, most common way, but we need a teacher for 5th grade boys at 9:30. You may really need one, but this is a legitimate need, no doubt. But we do need a teacher for the 5th grade boys class. But I'm just not sure this is the best way to go about recruiting. Stay with me. By the time I finish, I think you will see it too. So this tactic works occasionally, but it's also a short-lived tenure because eventually the worker feels it's time for someone else to rotate in. This method has little staying power because it creates a revolving door each Sunday school year. What the recruit hears is, we're desperate for your service. Did you know I don't want a job on the Titanic? I would like to be recruited to be on a winning team. I don't want to rearrange the furniture on the Titanic. It's going down, hon. Going down. People want to be on a winning team. I moved to Atlanta, Georgia from Wilmington, North Carolina in December 1986. Don't know if you know these names, but I led a well-known television fisherman to faith in Christ. He lived in our community. His name's Orlando Wilson. Orlando's still living. Eddie Rabbit wrote his song, Going Fishing with Orlando. And so we became really, really close friends, or to this day. He is in Parkinson's. He's in very poor health. And he called me the other day to talk to me about his funeral. I led him to Jesus. I still remember the date that man, we became such friends. And we've told the story so many times when he came to the Lord and God changed him. He started bringing with his wife, Carolyn, a lady named J.J. Ebom. I didn't know who J.J. was. Let me tell you what I remember about her. She only wore leather. Leather. She said, I travel a lot and this breathes good. And I thought, I should have known that. Leather breathes good. All right. So who is JJ? She's in charge of new programming for CNN. And she's personally dating Ted Turner. Well, guess what happened? She got saved. And when she got saved, guess what she did? Broke up with Ted. So listen what happened. Ted Turner, you could Google this, and it's all out there. Everything I'm telling you. Ted Turner has his secretary, her name's Dee, call my office one day. I'm in my late 30s. And here's what she says. Mr. Turner wants to know, can he have a conversation with you? And I'm thinking, wow. And I'm young, stupid, still stupid, just not as young. But I had no idea the magnitude of personality I was talking to. At that time, CNN was the only 24/7 news media. And he said, hey, I made some bad mistakes. Maybe you can help me. I said, okay. He said, I won the Humanist Award of the Year. I said, okay. He said, the night that they were giving it to me, I drank too much. So I was really pretty lit. So, all right. He said, when I got up and took it, I made some statements that hurt a lot of people. They made the front page of the AJC. So if you wanted to Google, I'll give you the statements so you can find it. He said, pro-lifers are bozos, and Christianity is a religion for losers. That was it. And he said, and it shouldn't be the 10 commandments. They ought to change it to the 10 suggestions. He said, I shouldn't have done that. This is what he said. All this is out there on the internet. He said, I bought CNN building from Tom Cousins. He's a very godly, wealthy businessman in Atlanta. And he said, he is a wonderful Christian. And he said, I think what I said hurt him. I want you to tell me how I can make it right. I'm in my 30s talking. He's worth $8 billion. I think I was worth $800. All right. So this is all factual. And so I said, well, if you come to our church, I'll host a meeting and you can ask the world to forgive you. Just bring in a CNN camera. And he did. So you'll get a kick out of this. How did we prepare for him? He wanted me to invite about 150 people from the community so he'd have an audience to speak to. And they have what's called a UPI rider, and UPI means it goes everywhere. And there'd be a camera in there from CNN. So we were going to do we had our fellowship hall upstairs. Well, I just got really taken back that what if God would let us lead him to Christ? So if there are any Pentecostals here, you're getting ready to fall in love with me. I anointed everything with oil. I mean, the handrail where he would walk up, we put all of it. God, in the name of Jesus, let the Holy Ghost just fill this place. All the seats were anointed. People probably left with oil stains on them. But anyway, so he came, and I'll never forget what he said. He said, I deserve to go to hell. Well, we all deserve to go to hell. But Christ made a way, and he said, I'm genuinely sorry. And it went around the world. Matter of fact, this is just a little tidbit. My wife and I had to leave our home for over 2 weeks because the media was at our house every day wanting something for us to say. I told him my life story that day, and he was interested. Let me tell you why he was interested. He reads his Bible a lot, and he said, you know what I don't understand about your story? I've never heard a story like yours. You had no religious upbringing. No religious influence. He said, you came to Jesus kind of like Saul of Tarsus. You just was converted. And I said, yeah. And he said, pray that God, I'll never forget. He said, would you pray for me? I said, sure. He said, pray for me that God would knock me down like he did Saul of Tarsus. And when I get up, I'm a believer like Paul. And Orlando Wilson was there, and Orlando said, I don't know if you want to pray that, because he may knock you down, you may not get up. Here's where the fun came in. People began to write me, and they said, I don't know if you've been thinking about this, Pastor Johnny, but if God lets you win him to Christ, what if he joins our church and tithes? His tithe would be $800 million. That would cover our budget, well, for the next 5 preachers. But let me tell you the fun I had with it. Why are you assuming that if he gets saved, he'll tithe when most of y'all don't? I thought I just like to keep it fun. You know what I mean? So, but it's just, you just don't know. All right, well, let me tell you something that you don't know. This will encourage you to be a witness. Ted Turner said, I don't expect you to remember it, Pastor Johnny. But he said, when I was 18 years old, Billy Graham did a crusade in Chattanooga. He said, I set more chairs up under the tent than anybody I know. He said, I was convinced God was calling me to be a missionary. Somebody may say, well, where did he go wrong? Church weren't there to disciple him. Listen to me carefully. He really believes that he met Jesus when he was younger. But his sister got lupus. And I guess with all this power, he just, you're used to making everything happen because you got money. But how many of you know there's some things money can't buy? And so when she got lupus, and lupus is a very painful disease, and she died with it, he said, I begged God to heal her, and she wouldn't. And I made my mind up I wouldn't serve him since. So I did all I could, and I wasn't around her that much to try to just bring him. But I thought, what if that man had been, are y'all listening? What if he'd have been discipled in a Bible study class with a teacher that took serious teaching the Word of God? There's no telling where he would possibly be. Now he's in dementia, and you don't even hear from him. He's out there on his own. Number 3, recruiting by imposing guilt. If you love Jesus, you'll do this. No, that's not the right way to do it. I love Jesus, and there's some things God's not called me to do. This is another common way to recruit. The tactic seldom works, but like its predecessors, it's short-lived tenure because eventually the guilt will wear off. So this method has little staying power because long-term service comes from joy, not a burden. You consider what you're doing a privilege to be serving, not a burden that is yours to bear. So what the recruit hears is, we are the spiritual ones around here, and we deem you a backslider if you're not going to jump in and help us. Number 4, recruiting using a combination of the above. Our demand is greater than our supply, and you're obligated to serve, you old sorry Christian. No, we tag team them and really lay the condemnation on thick. And the combination tactic is a lethal dose of belittlement. You're putting people down. So what the recruit hears, it's time to help them or leave the church. So all of these 4 tactics are ineffective because they do not appeal to the person's sense of worth. It doesn't call the person to be a difference maker. And it comes with a higher calling. Now, let me give you quickly 4 recruiting methods to employ so I can get to the second point. Number 1, recruiting according to one's ability and a sense of calling. So God has wonderfully called and gifted you for his glory. Now, it's your duty to discover what that looks like and what you're to do in developing and using it to serve others and bring glory to God. So helping people find their spiritual gift, that's what we're doing. You can go to newseasons.cc, and there it even says service. If you'll look at the menu, click on and look at service, and you can see some places to serve or share where you feel God's calling you to serve. And then there's over 130 questions in a spiritual gift inventory to help you to be able to discern from your own answers where you would serve. But let me say this. When God shows you where he wants you to serve, it's not going to shock you. It's going to be kind of a love of yours anyway. It's not like, it's kind of like somebody says, I'm afraid to surrender because God may send me to Africa. I don't know why people always said that, because I've been all over the world. My favorite country in the whole world is Kenya. I love Uganda, I love South Africa, but all the places. I've been all over Asia, all over Europe, and yet I love Kenya, of all places. So I don't know why people think I was going to send you here. So people need to serve out of their strength. And that's what you do when you realize God's gifted you. Remember, how God's gifted you, that's his gift to you. What you do with it is your gift back to him. And so this position then to experience fulfillment, fruit, and fun in ministry that you love doing it. So it produces excitement and joy and service, which produces longevity. And now you're not constantly replacing people because you got people that consider it an honor, a privilege, and a joy to serve. Now, Amanda, what are you, Amanda 1 or 2? Okay, just AK. But what was Amanda's last name that went to be with the Lord recently? Goss? Yeah. I bet I'm not the only one. God used that lady to touch my life. God is my witness. I think of her often. When I think of her, I'm sitting over here waiting to preach. She's on the front row battling cancer, trying to hang on for her children and for herself and for her calling. She loved working in the children's division. She was here days that I was training the staff that she probably should have been in bed. I can still see her on the front row when there weren't much life left. And if we were singing, her hands were raised. Or I want to say something to you. That is not happiness. Happiness is predicated on happenstance. That's joy which circumstances don't control. That's something that moves above and beyond that. That lady was a joy to watch. I would say she was called to do what she did. And those that observed it knew that she was gifted of God and had a joy to do that. That was a good place to say amen. It really is. So I'm glad I got to say that. Didn't plan to say it, but it dawned on me. And there are others. And you're one of them. And you're another one back there grinning at me. That you ladies, the way you embrace what you do is it's a joy to watch. So recruiting based on relationship. You and I are knit together like David and Jonathan. It will be difficult to help people find their calling if you have no relationship with them. When I was writing on leadership, I made this statement. Some of you heard me say it. You've got to connect with people before you can carry them anywhere. Or let me go a step further. One of the number one definitions of leadership in the world is leadership is influence. Now, we've come to believe it's not just leadership, but or influence, but that is the major component of a person being a leader. What does it mean by influence? And listen carefully. You can help change the way people think. You can lead people to do stuff they never dreamed they would do. And they will thank you for it eventually. And it was stuff maybe that you thought you never could do. But somebody showed you the value of your life, and you begin to believe God didn't make any junk. He created me in his image, and he can give anybody else in the whole world my fingerprints or my DNA. Nobody in the world. I read the other day, I think it's up to like 8,300,000,000 people alive on the planet. None of them are just like you. Stamped on your soul is made by God. And he made you in a way that you could serve him and bring him glory. And so people serve with you because they like you and want to be with you. You make it a point to be accessible to them. You're in the hallways greeting people because you love the people you get to serve. Number 3, recruiting by shared vision. In other words, imagine how God could use you to make an eternal difference in people's lives. Children, youth, adults. A difference that transcends earth. I mean, it's out of this world. So as a ministry leader, you ought to have a compelling vision that transcends this world and attracts them to your ministry. Now, does anybody else in here have ADD other than me? Does anybody? I don't know when anybody else got it, and you just know. I had a doctor not long ago. It's been a while now. He tried to get me on Ritalin, and I went to see my other doctor, and they said no. They said it's your ADD that makes you exciting because nobody never knows what you're going to say. And somebody asked me one time. They said, all the times you speak, have you ever been speaking and forgot what you were going to say next? Yes. What do? You keep preaching until you remember. So sometimes they ask my wife, God, he's going long today. She said, when he remembers what he's supposed to say, he'll wrap it up. But But I started telling you a moment ago. That's how my mind works. I was telling you a moment ago, but I had another thought. And so I love Richard Blackaby said, you chase rabbits better than anybody I've ever hunted with before. So I really do chase a lot of rabbits. But so listen to this. Talking about 100 running from 300 to 400. Or let's just say here, this church on the Sunday, we say, Shane was telling me the other day, it just seems like we run anywhere from 900 to 1,100. You have a real good attendance, be about 11, then you be at 9, and it's, back and forth. But you've been at that number for a couple of years at least. And so there's really not been. So what you'll do is you'll fall down some in the summer, they'll come back strong in the fall, but it's really the same number you left in the spring. It's got to be greater than that. So you begin to think, well, how could we move? So this pastor said to me, he wanted to spend a night. Remember that story I was telling 20 minutes ago? And he said, how could we move from 300 to 400? All right, first of all, you've got a real vision of reaching. It's like you're thinking what you'd like to do is by the grace of God, run 100 people. I said, all right, you've got to get it in your mind, and then you've got to cast vision. So you can't own that by yourself. And see, Steve Flockhart can't grow this church by himself. He can't bring any of us guys in that can grow it. The good staff that he's hired, you just can't grow it by yourself. But what we do, we cast a vision to you. And you start owning it with us. And what is a vision? A vision is being able to have the capacity to see what could be. It's realistic. There's a lot of people here that's unchurched. And so we could run that. So we begin to think, but then we break it down. And I say, you know what we're going to do? We're going to meet at least once a quarter. I meet my staff every week, but we're going to meet at least once a quarter. What we're going to do? Well, in a quarter, if I'm going to run 100 more, I need to be at least 25 more people in a quarter. So I'm measuring it. I'm doing incremental steps. And so if I'm not there, let's look at me. There's nothing wrong with the vision. There's nothing wrong with the goal, but there may be everything wrong with my strategy. My strategy is the vehicle that's going to help me to realize where I want to be. We planted, this is the first church I ever planted in my life, but we planted 125 others. And I think I told you, I planted a church that's planted more churches than any church in the Southern Baptist Convention. Of all places, planted in Las Vegas. What's done in Vegas stays in Vegas. Not that church. It's gone everywhere. All right, so basically, then I said, well, what are you going to do for on-ramps to help your people to get to where you want to be? And so what do you mean? I said, well, I'm going to do a friend day. What am I going to do the friend day for? And what I did, when I dealt with friend day, I always spelled it like they pronounce in Alabama. F-R-A-N, Fran. He's my Fran. And I did that for this purpose. The F speaks of my friends. Everybody has some friends. R is your relatives. Everybody has relatives, family members, extended family. A is everybody has work associate or class associates, every student. And then everybody has neighbors. What if I just got serious? I remember one day we did a friend day, and I had invited, we said it way a couple of months out, and I would call somebody and just say, hey, talk to the mayor. Hey, Donnie, we're doing friend day. Janet and I really think a lot of you and your wife is my wife's audiologist. She has some hearing issues, and we'd love for y'all to come. And listen to this. No day is just that, no day. When you say, I'd like for you to come sometime, that's not an invite. There's no way. But how about this? Would you come with me on February the 13th? And a lot of times when I'd say, hey, and we would love for y'all to come home with us to have lunch, or we want to take you out to eat, or whatever. I ended up with like 28. Now let me just say what I told our people. I'll never forget it. We ran a lot of people at our church. But what if everybody, and I know they're not going to do it, but what if everybody had brought 28? 6,000 to 28. So let me tell you what I did. This is how my mind works. The Atlanta Journal-Constitution would have their helicopter circling our church. Here would be the evening news. Ladies and gentlemen, this church has tens of thousands outside the building that can't get in because people are really serious about, wait a minute, I named it, the power of the invite. Oh, this is going to blow you away. 85% of you in this room tonight are here because somebody invited you. Not just to hear, but I mean, I'm talking about as a Christian in a church. Sunday morning, 85% of every member in every church in America will be there because somebody invited them. Somebody brought them. Might have been a family member or friend. But they may have drugged you if it was your mom and dad. But somebody said they were raised on drugs. Their mom and dad drug them to church every Sunday. But we did. So here's what you're doing. Why are you having these special emphasis? Because you've cast vision. You want your people to own it, and you're giving them on-ramps that they can come on the ramp and bring somebody. And then I turn around and say, hey, we're going to do this big festival, and I'm inviting you, and I'm going to be sharing the gospel. So what I'm doing, I've laid out 3 or 4 major events, and those events are to help to encourage the growth that I'm trusting God for in that. And then a lot of times, let me go somewhere else. This is for the staff in particular. If you don't measure what you're trying to do, a lot of times it don't get accomplished. But you may be at a season in your life where you'd say, man, I just don't feel like things are going good. But you'll go back and you'll look at your numbers, and you're further down the road than you had even anticipated. But you're not measuring. How in the heck can you know? When somebody says it's not going good, what do you even mean by that? Unless you have some form of measurement. So if I've been in the business of, and here's what I've said, my whole ministry, listen to this, my whole life, 50 years of ministry, here's what I said. Here's where I started. I want to take as many people to heaven with me as I can. Number 2, I want to help develop as many fully devoted followers of Jesus Christ as I can. I've been saying that for 50 years. So I'm trying to influence other lives, help other ministries. So a ministry leader, you ought to have a compelling vision that transcends this world and attracts others to your ministry. Your transcendent vision ought to give people a reason to want to serve. They ought to say, I want to be a part of that. Now, back to Ted Turner. I weren't through with him. Guess what he did? In 1987, he said, Mr. Hunt, you can sit in my private box at the Brave Stadium anytime you want to. There was a problem. I'd go out there and sit in it. But we couldn't win a game in 87. Nobody was there to see me. I wanted to like say, put that cam on me, put me up on a big screen. I'm in Turner's seat. But there weren't anybody there. Let me tell you why. That's right. That's why I let me have the seat. He weren't about to go see him. But guess what happened? In just a few years' time, they turned it around, and the stadium was packed. Why did people start coming? Are y'all listening? People want to be on a winning team. If the church is sucking wind to get people to serve, people just coming to sit and soak and receive. How many of you have ever been to Israel? Anybody here ever been to the land of Israel? Look at there. All right, Israel. All right, let me tell you something about it. How many of you floated in the Dead Sea? Let me see. Come on now. If you've been, you better float in the sea. Yeah, okay. Why do they call it the Dead Sea? Nothing will live in it. What's the problem? Do we have any idea? Somebody can say it was the high salt content. That's part of it, but there's another reason. It receives from the mighty Jordan. Are y'all listening? It has no outlet. You're comatose if there's no outlet. The joy in my life comes not from what you do for me, but the privilege to serve others. And so I'm going to find that. I'm going to find my place, in the words of Stevie Wonder, in the sun. But I'm in a service, all right? So I'm going to find my place of service. So your transcendent vision ought to employ others in eternity. Number 4, recruiting results from momentum. You make no verbal statement. Your ministry energy makes one for you. Wouldn't it be so neat that what I'm doing, God is so blessing everybody's talking and people are wanting to know, what have I got to do to get in? I want in on that. So because you've practiced the 3 recruiting methods above, you have momentum going for you. Now this is good. What is momentum? For instance, here's what John Maxwell will say. If your church has momentum, he'll say, it's hard to stop when you have Big Mo on your side. Take a locomotive, put a 2x4 on the track. It won't move. Take a locomotive, get it moving, put a brick wall, it goes straight through it. Momentum, it's already on the move. And that's what we need. We need Big Mo on our side. Now, momentum is an organizational word. Morale is an individual word. By the way, I'm going to say something to you. I want you to listen carefully to this. The reason sometimes a ministry does not have momentum is because that ministry does not have morale. I'm telling you, I know what I'm talking about. I used to teach my staff for 20 years. I teach them 30 minutes, what I was learning in leadership and what I was writing. I would do it with all of my staff. Everybody ate breakfast with me, 200 of them. 20 years on Monday morning. I'd go in and listen to this. I bet I didn't eat dinner 5 times in 20 years. Why? I had a purpose. They were sitting in tables of 8. I'd go in and get a cup of coffee and walk around, and here was my goal. While they were eating, I wanted to touch every person. And I pick at people, like I'd push them. How you doing? Tip their head or something. If I did know something's going on, it's like y'all had a big birthday celebration. But I just went around the room, did that for 20 years. Let me tell you what I would discover. Weren't looking for it. I'd go to a table and something weren't right. How many of you been in a room or something and you knew something weren't right? It was sour, okay? Sour. So I'd find out. So I'd call somebody and I'd say, man, what was going on at your table? You picked up on it, did you? I said, yeah, it was pretty obvious. Y'all were just sitting there sulking. Every one of you should have been sucking your thumbs. And then they'd say, well, and I can name him right now. I remember this. I'm talking about instant. They said he's mad about something and he kind of spoiled it for all of us. So what would you do with that, preacher? I called him to my office. I said, you having a bad day, aren't you? Well, and he just went on, everything was sour grapes. Kind of like the person that had that cheese that stunk, got in his mustache, and he said, I don't know what it is, something stinks. And after a while, he went outside and he said, the whole world stinks. And it was just that piece of cheese. But anyway, but the whole world stunk to him. So let me tell you what I did. I said, I'm sending you home today. You're only welcome back tomorrow if your attitude shifts. If not, I'll work out a severance package with you. You are not going to ruin our team. It's like somebody's talking bad about me and they work for me. Let me tell you why you fire them. You don't have to pay people to talk ugly about you. People do that free, okay? So I'm not going to pay. You are not going to work for me and talk ugly about me. You're going to be gone. It's just, Oh, I'm not pastor anymore, see? I can't fire anybody. I just talk big now that I'm not doing it. All right, so morale is an individual word. All right, you can have no organizational momentum until you first have individual morale. Isn't that something? Now, I'm using the word momentum, organizational. The church is on the move. That class is on the move. Your group is on the move. That is a organizational movement. But it's all predicated on individual morale. So don't miss that. Get a sour grape over there, and they're going to hurt the momentum of what they're involved in. I've been doing this a long time. So when you've recruited ministry leaders correctly, and you've already instilled morale in them, when you have leaders with high morale than low morale, you have momentum. And you see momentum as just the accumulation of individual morale. So when you show me something that is no longer on the move, if you'll let me investigate it, I will find your problem. And if I can't, my wife can, because she finds my problems all the time. So at this point, you're not asking them to serve, they're asking you. You create so much energy, enthusiasm, and morale that it draws people to your ministry. People love to join a winning team. Now, let me give you some important questions because I've only made it through one point, but you got the notes, and they'll put online the answers. I'll beg them to. All right, so here it is. Which of these methods best motivate people to join you in ministry? Which of these methods have the best long-term effect on your ministry? Which of these methods best describe your recruiting efforts? Which of these recruiting methods is most used by your church? How will you recruit from this time forward? And so a nugget of gold. The way you recruit a leader says volumes about how important you view the potential leader and how important you view the ministry position. Now, let me see if I can get a little ways down the road in these next few minutes in developing or purifying the gold. Okay, so we found the gold, right? We've discovered it. But remember, when you put the heat on, and that normally comes with ministry opportunity, there's a little bit of purifying that takes place. We become better than when we first started. We'll grow some. So there's two aspects of development, enlistment and equipping. So most church leaders see the obvious need to equip people as being essential for ministry. But most miss seeing the enlistment process as part of the developing process. But it is. The way you enlist a leader is actually the first step in training and developing them. So when you're thinking about how did I develop them, I'm going to talk to you about what I do in trying to enlist them, and it is actually part of the developing process. So they're not separate. So to protect the prospective leader's first training session is the process, and that process sets the direction and standard for leadership. So let's talk about the purpose of enlistment. Finding committed leaders is more important than finding competent leaders. Boy, be careful about saying, I don't know if they can do it or not. Man, you give me a person with the right heart, I can help them with the skills. But give me somebody with all the skills and a bad heart, and I'm telling you, that's a difficult person to work with. So a good enlistment process will do this. Number one, to find committed workers that will give the ministry appropriate leadership and are willing to work. So another way to say this is to filter out the uncommitted. So the problem with our churches today is not competency. God has filled our churches with gifted, competent people. Competency is negated by uncommitment. Give me somebody that's committed, but commitment will find a way to be competent. So there's only two options regarding commitment. You either are in or you're out. There's no such thing as life in between. And that's right out of Tennessee, Coach Pat Riley. Okay, so speaking of commitment, Jesus said it this way. I know your works that you're neither cold or hot. I wish you were either cold or hot. So then because you're lukewarm and neither cold or hot, I'll vomit you out of my mouth. Best way to say it is, makes him sick. Number two, to convey a compelling vision of your ministry. Number three, to speak to the individual sense of purpose and meaning. So when you talk about, here's what we're trying to do, we're doing this ministry on purpose, and here's some of the major meaning behind it. So to immediately sow seeds of ministry, philosophy, and commitment into the heart and mind of the prospective leaders. So here's a process, 8 steps I wrote, 8 steps in the process of enlistment. Number one, explore the possibilities. No prospective leader shall be approached until asking for God's direction. Jesus said, the harvest is great, laborers are few. Pray you therefore the Lord of the harvest that he would send forth laborers into the harvest. I'd pray, God, I need some people in these areas. I pray that you'd make me sensitive, those people that are already here. And I pray you'd prepare their heart for my visit. And I pray that if this is your will for them, call them to this work. Let me tell you what I know about calling. It's the staying power for service. If you're somewhere and you don't feel called to do that, you're not long term. I'm telling you. But when you're called, it becomes the staying power. So prospective leaders should be recommended by their current teachers. So you ought to be, and some of you are the current teachers. So you know better than anybody else. You may not feel like you know much, but you ought to know more than anybody else. So if the prospective leader is not in Sunday school or not in some type of small group, then it should wave a red flag at you. However, I've got to say this, and I can be corrected. There's hardly any opportunities to be in small groups. We got quiet. So I've got to create opportunities. You say, I don't know where you do it. And it'd be easy to say, we don't have space. I'd have to say, are you sure? Just nowhere? Another night? What am I going to do? I'm going to create a way if I feel it's something I'm supposed to do. So I don't pursue a person as potential leader if they're not in what I already see as opportunities, unless they're excruciating circumstance. And I'll be honest here, there are some. So how can a person be a leader if they haven't been a good follower? So how can a person have a passion and commitment for people in ministry when they've not gotten involved at the grassroots level? But I've got to be able to provide those grassroots levels, or I don't even have an opportunity to raise up leaders. Now think what I just said. I don't have an opportunity to raise up leaders. I mean, you've tied my hands. Number 2, engage the process. All enlistment must be initiated, listen to this, in a face-to-face meeting. Don't catch somebody in the hall and just say, hey, I want you to pray about this. You're not showing the importance of that mission. And you're not showing the real value of that person. So you say to them, I'm the type like, hey, meet me at Waffle House. Can I get a witness? One of my friends just said, hey, we need to catch up. And he said, I'm leaving town tomorrow. I'll be back on the 12th. As soon as you can after the 12th, let's meet. It'll be a face-to-face. I'm not one to say, hey, I'll just call you. We grab Zoom or something. No, I'd rather meet face-to-face. You're about to ask someone to consider taking the most important position, and this deserves a personal face-to-face meeting. These are my thoughts. You cannot know someone's potential until you invest in a personal enlistment process. Number 3, you cheapen the position by enlisting over the phone or spontaneously in the church hallway. Expectations are presented. We go over these things when we're enlisting a Sunday school teacher. Here's what we dealt with. We had a Sunday school philosophy. We had a ministry description. Truths we hold dear. You had to write out your personal testimony. You had to sign a Sunday school covenant. And the expectations are discussed at this time. So additional materials to supply are curriculum guides, a list of current workers in the class roll. So it's your job to clarify your standards and expectations up front. Clear expectations. And the only way you can determine the prospect's value and loyalty is to present your expectations. My family leads a lot of ministries. They lead for 30 years senior adult conferences called Jubilee. They're in Gatlinburg, they're in Branson. My granddaughter owns one of the fastest growing women's ministry in America called Favored. They're just 4 years old. And she had 6,000 last year in Gatlinburg, 3,000 in Branson, 2,000 in Destin. So here's a 27-year-old young lady. She's watched her parents do conferences since she was 9 years old. And now she's leading them herself. She saw it modeled, and then she wanted to be involved in it. And she's got quite a vision, already wanting to add other cities. She's influential in what she's doing, even at a young age. But she's had others to model what that looks like. And so confirmation is given only when commitment is given. The old cliche is true. In an organization where anything goes, soon nothing goes. So you examine God's purpose, instruct a prospective leader that you want people who are called, and encourage them to seek God's will in this important matter. Give me about 3 more minutes and I'll quit. Thank you. That was a yes. A church needs leaders called by God, not coerced by guilt tactics. Experienced teachers are those not called will not last long. Then you have to go do it all over again. So you create your own cycle of frustration when you don't enlist properly. So work diligently, but wait patiently on the right person. Explain the potential. State why the person was considered for the position and how they could minister in a great way. See, many people have a hard time believing they could teach, be an outreach leader, be a group leader, and you need to encourage them at this point. Remember, you received a recommendation from their teacher, and this should be encouraging to them to know that their teacher thought highly of them and believed in them. And remember, everyone needs someone to believe in them, especially when they may be little unsure of themselves. I was doing a study on believing in people and wrote a good bit about it. Here's what I found out. Did you know that most people don't believe in themselves? Did you know that most people can't name somebody they know for sure believes in them? But let me tell you my favorite. If someone becomes aware that somebody really does believe in them, they'll do everything within their power to make the person that believes in them proud of them. Can I tell you one? Can I tell you one? Your pastor. I picked Steve up and put him in ministry, baptized him when he was saved in a crusade I sponsored, when Freddie Gage was preaching. I think you've heard that story, over the wall. And Steve came into our church, and he had not lived right. He was a royal pagan. Matter of fact, he did some things so mean, I told him he ought to quit sharing it, because I just don't know that we can't handle that, you know. A man used to talk about how he beat his wife. I said, don't ever do that again in my presence. Leave that part out. You know, don't bring that up. But anyway, people want to whoop you afterwards. But I had the opportunity, and he went through a low time in his life, and I reached out. You know what a friend is? A friend is the person that walks in when everybody else walks out. And by the way, and let me say something, I commend you. Thank you for amening. But it's a whole lot easier to amen it than it is to do it. And so I walked in. And so he's thinking, I don't know what I'm going to do. He had been fired. And so I said, you're gonna come and live in our ministry. So I found him a place to live in that cost him nothing. And I made professional counseling available for him and Vicky. And I believed in him. And then the day came that the church I had the privilege to help start 36 years ago with the man that was here Sunday in a wheelchair, sitting on the back wall, Ernie Simmons. And then the day came and I thought, I've got a guy that went through a bad time, but he's in a good place now. I really believe in him. And that was almost 15 years ago. And we recommended that Steve Flockhart become the pastor. I didn't plan to share that, but everybody needs somebody to believe in him. And I'm going to be honest with you, he's done real well, knowing somebody believes in him, somebody's cheering him on, somebody's saying, hey, I'm grateful. Sometimes people say, aren't you glad God's the God of a second chance? Are you kidding me? Second? How about third and fourth? How about 100th? Come on. Who under God's heaven has only needed a second chance? That means you only screwed up once. I don't even, if that's all you've messed up, I don't even want to be your friend. You'd be so disappointed in me. All right. Encourage the prospect. Close the meeting praying with the prospective leader and seeking God's will together. Employ a plan. Determine a time to meet again for follow-up. Equip the person. Once the prospects commits have a plan in place to equip them. And, somebody may say to me, expect some of y'all to say, Pastor Johnny, I know you're giving us all this, 30,000 foot stuff we can use or we're going to get involved. But how do you train them? Alan Taylor was my minister of education for 20 years. At the seminaries, we have 6 Southern Baptist seminaries in America. All of them, through the years, have used Alan Taylor's books on training leaders for Sunday school. So then he went into a studio and he does the training for teachers. So if you said you're going to have teachers, all you got to do is invest in about a $59 video with 4 series in it, and he trains the leaders. So who's training them? The one that trains the seminary students, the one that trains the preachers that put them out. So there's helps out there for you, because you think sometimes, I don't know if I know how to do all of this. I don't know if anybody can do it all. So I'm glad we've got people to come alongside us that can help us. So the product of enlistment, and I'll give it to you and we'll quit on this one. Your enlistment process is actually beginning, as I said, it's the equipping process. When you spend time with someone in the enlistment process, you develop a healthy relationship that will continue to grow as you serve together. People are motivated by relationships. I believe next to lordship, the most important word in the human vocabulary is relationship. It's amazing what you'll do for somebody that you wouldn't do for just anyone. How did you get him? I was in Nashville flying back to Panama City Beach on a Southwest airline, and weather set in and I was on a 4-hour delay. So I thought I'd FaceTime your pastor. And he was having the worst night, maybe, since he'd gotten out of the hospital. And he said, Pastor Johnny, thank you for calling me. I'm having a hard time concentrating. I'm hurting so bad. And I'm not going to go into the weeds of this, but I said, well, when are you going to see your doctor? And he said, he can't see me for 8 days. I said, I'll call you back. I called my doctor that when his wife fell in love with somebody else and left him, I was there for him. He's a Jewish man. We're close friends, Orthodox Jew, but he's conservative in his beliefs. I called him. I said, I got a friend and he is in so much pain. He needs to see a urologist. He said, can you have him in my office at 8 o'clock tomorrow morning? And that's when your pastor started a journey of getting well. And Lord willing, this week or next week, God willing, they'll do one more procedure and there should be no need for any other procedure for him to start a total walk toward wholeness. And that's what I'm praying for. And I know you are too, and doing it. But how did that happen? How could you pick up the phone and call Carl Capilouto at 9 o'clock at night? Relationship. I know him. He knows me. You know what he does? I walked in his office the other day. You know what he said? I've been calling you. I said, well, I didn't see where I missed a call from you. He said, I just had to give a patient bad news and I knew you were coming in today. I was going to ask you to show up a few minutes early so you could pray with him. Orthodox Jew. But he knows there's something to this king that I'm serving. And so time spent in the enlistment process allows each of us to know each other on the inside. Thus, a mutual respect is built that will be long lasting. The product of a purposeful, deliberate enlistment process will render low turnover, long-term success, and sustained momentum. So let me give you the nugget of gold, and it's my last sentence. The way you enlist a leader says volumes about how important you view the potential leader and how important you view the ministry position. So I'm going to meet with you in person because I view the position I want you to serve, and I view you as the person that I want to serve. And then you can get the other. We'll put the answers out there, all right? Hey, thanks for being here. Next week is week 4. It's the last week I'll be teaching for. Lord willing, I'm back, I think October the 12th. Steve wants me to do a stewardship message. Come and tell you how you need to get more money. So I know you'll be real excited when I tell everybody about that. But now next week's the last. So here's the good news for you. The Bible says, he that endures to the end shall be saved. So if you don't come hear me next week, some of you ain't gonna make it, you know. Now you can leave and say, the man's a nut. I'm going back to here because you never know what he's going to say. He claimed if we didn't come next week, we're not going to be saved. Come on, Jeremy, and close out. Hey, thank you very much.